On today's episode of Aqua Kids,
It's all about stream and river restoration.
so, ready to make a difference?
Building a better planet starts with you.
Aqua Kids, traveling around the world, going where we've never been before, having fun and so much more, learning from our friends of the sea, saving them is up to you and me. Aqua Kids.
What's up? And welcome to another exciting episode of Aqua Kids. I'm Drew.
Okay, Drew, I think that was the most interesting open I've seen. But I'm Katie, and on today's episode of Aqua Kids, we'll be learning all about stream and river restoration.
That's right, Katie. Many streams and rivers in Maine are not well qualified for fish habitat. Whether they're interrupted by a culvert or beaver dam, or simply just lacking in dips and curves, sometimes these obstacles can prevent fish from leading healthy lives.
Very true. This is why it is so important that these areas are being restored in order to make sure that these fish can lead healthy lives.
Well, let's go learn some more.
All right.
We're here at the Narragansett River.
Selena, did you know that 14,000 years ago we had 2 miles of ice on top of us?
Wow, Drew, that's really cool.
Well, let's go check in with Katie and Clark and see what we can find out about it.
All right.
So glaciation is one of the processes that has formed the
Hey, guys.
Narragansett River.
Hey. Scott, was there really 2 miles of ice right here where we're standing?
Yeah, not only 2 miles of ice, but the ocean was only probably about 1.5 miles over there because of glaciostatic rebound. Have you ever heard that term?
Well, what does that mean?
So after the glaciers receded, the land has actually risen about 300 feet here. So we're about 300 feet higher now than when the glaciers were here when we had 2 miles of ice above us.
How is the Narragansett River formed?
Well, think about all that ice, and when the glaciers melted, all the flow of water that came down was the original force that formed the river.
So it scoured out the riverbed?
Created it, yes. And if you look at this river now, we have the modern rainfall is what the source of the water is now. So we have a lot less water coming down in that old channel. And some of the thought process is that this river and the other rivers down east still are not in equilibrium in the changes from yesteryear to now. Then what you had approximately in the early 1800s, the rivers were used as the mechanism for driving logs. Downstream in Cherryfield, you had several mills. In the 1800s, logs were driven down these rivers, which some of the problems you have is the straightening and scouring of those rivers. If you look up and downstream, you have a very, very wide, straight channel.
Right.
Rivers don't do that. Rivers, if you think sinuosity like a snake moving, that's how rivers want to be.
So we've lost that habitat complexity because we need the riffles and the pools and the other areas in the river for species diversity, right?
Correct. And if you think of salmon, brook trout as drift feeders, they want to hide out behind a rock. You look at this river, it's about 75 feet wide, very plain straight across on the bottom. There's not something called what we call a thalweg, which is the deepest part of the channel that moves back and forth. So again, one of the problems we face in restoration is convincing some of the regulators that this is not pristine. We have legacy impacts here. And so that's some of the issues that we'll be dealing with and showing you later on.
It is so weird to think that a habitat that looks so pristine is actually in grave danger.
That's right, Katie. Although it may appear to be healthy, the lack of sinuosity really impacts the biodiversity of the river. Without those twists and curves, a lot of different fish species do not have the habitat they need to be successful.
I couldn't have said it better, Drew. Luckily, there are efforts underway to restore some of these rivers.
Stick around to find out more about these projects when Aqua Kids comes back. Aqua Kids presents another Aqua Kids Pop Quiz. Most icebergs come from glaciers along the coast of Greenland, with a few coming from eastern Canadian Arctic islands. On average, 40,000 medium to large icebergs are created each year and can drift as far south as 48 degrees north, about the same latitude as Paris, France. Can you guess the weight of the largest iceberg ever recorded? Was it A, over 1 million tons, B, over 1 billion tons, or C, over 1 trillion tons? Stick around, and I'll be back with the chilling answer after the break. Okay, time to break the ice on this pop quiz. Did you guess the weight of the largest recorded iceberg ever? The answer is C, over 1 trillion tons. That's enough ice to supply everyone in the world with 240 tons of pure drinking water.
Welcome back to Aqua Kids.
We're headed back to Maine to learn about some important efforts underway to restore some degraded rivers.
Well, Selena, we're now at a different section of the Narragansett River, but if you notice, this section is a lot different than the area we were at before.
Yeah, Katie, apparently they've been putting large pieces of wood into the water to restore the natural habitat.
That's so cool. Let's go talk to Ernie and find out more about this project.
Let's go.
So we're about to yank this maple tree into the river as part of this habitat improvement work that we're doing.
Hey guys.
Hey, Katie.
Hey, Katie. Hey, I was just explaining to Clark and Drew here that we're about to pull this tree into the river as part of this overall project in this stretch to improve salmon habitat.
Nice.
So why are you putting woody vegetation back into the river?
Well, in the years past, we haven't had, well, how do you say, we have natural recruitment from large trees that occurs. However, given the forest history around here, we don't have large pieces of wood, or the trees aren't dying on their own and falling in. So we're kind of helping the process along a little bit. By yanking trees in, we end up having with the tree ends up being attached to the riverbank, which helps keep it in place. And then when it's all done and said, it traps leaves that are migrating downstream in the fall. It sediments. It helps sort out some of the sediments, and because when you don't have that, you have a more uniform flow. You end up having a uniform bottom, but you need spaces with rocks like about this big that don't have a lot of that aren't inundated with spines and all that for salmon to live in and other fish species.
So they lay their
Bugs
eggs
that
in
they
those
eat,
areas.
They can lay, yes, they can. They'll spawn in it. And what happens when you speed up the water with these kinds of diversions? Fish will fall into there. They'll use it as their territory. They'll keep an eye up as stuff drifts over. They'll go up and feed, and it's quite remarkable.
So I understand I have something to do with this process.
Yes, and we'll take you over to Jock, and we'll show you what we're gonna do.
All right.
Walk on over here. Walk upriver a bit.
So what am I doing?
You're going to use this device called a grip hoist to haul this tree across the river. And we use 2 different methods when we apply wood to the stream. We use chop and drop, which is exactly what it sounds like, where we use a chainsaw. We hire a woodcutter to come in and hand cut a piece of wood into the river. Or we use this method with a grip hoist. This method is a little better because you end up with the roots still attached at the riverbank, which keeps the peats from moving, and especially in a wider stretch like this, that's important. Because we don't have great big huge 100-foot long trees we're taking down. They can't lock themselves in, so they'll be moved downstream. So what you need to do is, this is a pretty easy device, and you just sit there and pull back and forth on it.
All right.
And it looks easy now, but when you get some tension on it, it won't be.
All right.
And in the meantime, they're gonna hack away at the roots on the other side of the tree so that it will pivot forward.
Okay.
So go ahead,
There
knock
you go.
yourself out.
All right.
Yeah, you feel as it goes along, it'll give a little bit, and then it gets
Yeah.
easier. Yeah.
I think it's coming.
Yeah, look at it go.
Look at it. Oh.
Come on, Drew.
All right, now that we got the tree in the water, sort of, we've repositioned the hoist here so that we can pull it downstream. That way it provides a channel on one side for a canoeist to get through, and also positions it a little better.
Looks hard.
So is this in a good spot now?
Yeah, it is. Now that it's here, as the seasons go by, it'll get pushed down. Next winter when we have ice in the river, it'll push that over a little more. Canoeists can get through here. It's angled well too, that it'll divert water over and start some channel forming on this side, meaning it'll start to cut down into the substrate and transport stuff down through.
It's great to see that there are projects to restore some of the rivers and fish habitats.
Absolutely. All of these projects, well, sometimes just as simple as pulling down a tree, are very helpful in restoring the health of the streams.
I can tell you, Katie, pulling down that tree was not that simple. It was really hard work.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see you try to work that grip hoist.
I'd have to hit the gym for a while before I'd be strong enough to pull down that tree.
Well, don't go too far. When Aqua Kids returns, we get to see another problem impacting rivers. Aqua Kids is back. Now we're off to a beaver dam to see how they can negatively impact the environment.
It's so weird to think that a natural structure such as a beaver dam can have such devastating impacts on the natural flow of the river as well as the wildlife living in the river.
Well, let's go learn some more.
Okay.
We're here at Barrow Brook, a local stream that's a tributary to the Narraguagus River.
Where it's being impeded by a beaver dam.
Well, let's go check in with Clark and Katie and see if we can learn a little more about it.
All right, let's go.
It's a beaver important resource here in Maine. And the
Hey
whole
guys. Hi.
Hi. I was just explaining the history of beaver here in Maine, how important resource, and all through the United States and through Canada. That was the main reason for trade in beaver pelts. Starting back in the 1700s, they exploited the beaver population. And here in Maine, right after the turn of the century, the trapping was so intense that they actually closed the trapping season on beaver. And today it's opened up and it's been a big success story. And today we harvest around 20,000 beaver pelts a year.
Beavers are important ecological engineers because of the ponds that they create behind their dams. But I've heard that there's also a problem. What's the problem with the dam behind us?
This particular one is, as you mentioned, it is providing real a good habitat for waterfowl and aquatic fur bearers and upland fur bearers. But in this particular one problem they do cause is, as example, in this dam, as we're looking here, it impedes the upstream and downstream migration of fish, which is for weather spawning and also to reach cooler water in the summer.
So the salmon can't get beyond this dam because it's a big obstruction.
Yeah, I mean, there's two problems with beaver dams on salmon tributary streams. One is it prevents the adult salmon to get up there to spawn, and it also prevents the young of the year and salmon smolts that are migrating out to sea to get out to sea. So it's an impediment both upstream and downstream movement. Plus it does have adverse effect on water quality and water temperature.
So what are you going to do about it?
Usually in this type of situation, there's two things we do. First is we trap, and usually live trap and remove the beaver and relocate them to a place where they won't cause a problem that isn't on a salmon stream. Right. And then we breach the dam to allow fish passage, usually by hand, so there'll be less disturbance to the stream.
I'm standing in some still water in the Narraguagus River, which is caused by remnants of a dam that was created in the 1800s. It creates warm water, which can become an issue for the salmon. So let's go meet up with Katie and Selena and see what we can learn.
So Ernie, what is the problem with this dam behind us?
Naturally nothing, but because it's built on an artificial structure, it's in a place that it normally wouldn't be. And what it's done is it's impounded the river behind it. It creates a heat sink. It's over widened it. The vegetation that would grow naturally on the riverbank is dead because it's flooded. And when it does that, it raises the water temperature overall. And it kind of makes this piece of river we're standing in not suitable for Atlantic salmon.
And how is this going to be resolved?
Well, today we're going to pull this beaver dam and the remnant dam, which is on the other side of this island, in the same, with a machine called a grip hoist, or with just manual labor. The beaver dam will just be manual labor. We'll pick it apart by hand until we get it down. We have a permit from the Department of Inland Fish and Wildlife to remove this beaver dam completely.
And so after we remove this beaver dam, how long will it take until things are back to normal?
Well, the stream forming processes will happen fairly quickly. By this fall, I would say, or even by this afternoon, when this is complete, we'll see the river has the water level drop, new substrate will be exposed. But over the process of the next year or so, as we have different flows come through here, ice action and other things, the substrate will scour out, it'll clean itself out. The tree part, the riparian area, that could take several years to fully develop.
Well, once you remove the dam, what's going to happen to the beaver?
Well, the beaver will find a new place to live. When the water level comes down, they'll retreat back into their into other streams or into other ponds. There's probably another beaver dam upriver anyway. They like to eat. They like to get up and eat the alders that are on the riverbank and stuff. So the water kind of gives them safety in that regard. But they'll survive. They'll do just fine.
Steve, you ready to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, let's crank it.
Yes, Selena.
Just tell people this
She's
is
pulling out a
why you
piece
took
of history
physics
here.
in high school.
Look how easy that was. Keep on going, a little bit more.
Did it go, Steve? We'll just have her take it 5 or 6 feet, then grab the next one.
Okay. How much did we get on that one? 5 feet? All right, guys, we're gonna take this out. 3, 2, 1.
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
let's do it. On.
Good job, guys. You got it flowing down pretty good, and you can see the sediment starting to move.
Yeah, I can feel the.
This is probably backed up for a mile. It's going to flow like this all night. And by tomorrow, we'll hopefully just have a couple inches of water on here and start over again.
I see you got your turn on that grip hoist.
Yeah, I did. It wasn't so bad. It was actually rewarding to be a part of removing the dam.
I agree. It was fun to know that our actions were helping to restore the habitat for so many species.
We really were making a difference. Here's our top story. Threatened freshwater fish hurt by the aquarium trade. According to a recent publication in Biological Conservation, more than 1.5 million freshwater fish belonging to 30 threatened species were exported from India during the last 7 years. The fish, being used for the international aquarium trade, were taken from 2 epicenters of biodiversity in India, the Eastern Himalaya and the Western Ghats, both of which are home to species found nowhere else in the world. Although many of these species are protected and their harvest regulated, the aquarium trade did not seem to follow any of the local guidelines. Because of this, globally threatened species such as the red Canarese barb were still exported in the trade. The impacts are tremendous, and many of the endangered fish populations have been harvested to a point of no return. People need to take notice and stop this largely unregulated trade before it wipes out hundreds of precious freshwater fish populations. I'm Katie with Aqua News, keeping you connected to our planet. Now back to Aqua Kids. Hey, welcome back.
Let's head to Maine and learn about some more projects that are helping to restore fish habitat.
Okay.
The size of culverts causes problems, restricting water flow and cutting off the fish's passage upstream. What's the matter with this culvert?
Well, years ago when they designed round culverts, they took into consideration sizing just to pass water from one side of the road to the other and didn't really take stream ecology into effect. During high flow events, this acts like a fire hose and it creates this plunge pool, and you see over time you have a leak barrier. So small fish aren't able to negotiate up into here. Also during high flows, you actually have a velocity barrier. Fish can only sustain their speed upstream against the current for so far. So if they get halfway up the culvert, tire, and flush back out.
So they can't get up the culvert.
So what we're going to be doing is taking this one out and replacing it with a natural stream bottom with a bridge over in that location.
Well, several hours have passed, and through the magic of television, boom, here's our bridge. Steve, this is amazing. Look at this. Water flow, I'm sure fish can get through that. What do you think?
Yeah, take and watch for a little bit, and I bet you'll see some go on through.
This time last year, the water where I'm standing was up to my chin, which created many, many problems for salmon as it was too warm for them to survive. But luckily, thanks to Project Share and their partners, they've replaced a round bottom culvert with a fish-friendly one. Hey, Steve.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Fine.
So tell us, how did you get it back to this state?
Well, we had a small round culvert here that was causing a fish passage problem. We replaced it with an open bottom arch last year. This was all ponded up warm water heat sink. So generally what we do is do the road crossing project, wait a year, let this drain, and now we're going to start planting trees, which maybe not in my lifetime, but certainly yours, will give shade to what will become eventually a brook trout stream again.
So what about the trees? Does the species that we plant matter?
Yeah, trees tolerate a different amount of moisture. So as we get closer to the stream, the wetter soil conditions will deal with things like white cedar, black spruce. As we get up the bank a little bit in the drier conditions, we do white pine, red pine, and white spruce.
And those are species that the beavers might not eat?
Yeah, they generally like hardwoods, the alders, maple, things like that. Once in a while they do get into the cedar, but that's pretty much a secondary food for them.
We sure did a lot today, Drew. I'm tired.
We definitely learned a lot. I was amazed to see how many different factors were impacting fish habitat. From beaver dams and heat sinks to culverts and unhealthy streams, it seemed like there were an endless number of obstacles for fish.
I know, it was crazy. It was good to see that people recognize these obstacles, however, and we're making a conscious effort to try and repair the natural fish habitat. By removing dams, adding large woody debris to the water, creating fish-friendly culverts, and planting trees, scientists were really trying to improve the living conditions for these fish.
Of course, their efforts remind us that everyone can do their part to help keep this planet green and blue.
And so can you.
So visit our website for cool eco tips.
And fun links to show you how we can keep the world.
And the water, a great place to play and explore.
And we'll see you next time
on Aqua Kids.
It's up to you and me, Aqua Kids.